Imagine your entire life. You've been the shadow. The quiet one, the capable one, the plain one, while your sister, radiant as the morning sun, was destined for a grand life. But what happens when she refuses her destiny? When she looks at you, with tears that aren't quite real, and says the 5 words that will shatter your world and forge a new one. Then let the plain one go. You are being sent across 1,000 miles of unforgiving wilderness, a substitute bride armed with a lie, sent to a man who is expecting a beauty, but will get you. What would you do? This is a story about the lies we are told and the truths we choose to live. Before we journey into the heart of the untamed West, take a moment to support our channel. Hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss a tale. And let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching from today. Your support truly means the world. Now, let's begin. The morning light in Finch Creek, Missouri always felt tired, filtering through the yellowed curtains of the Mayhew farmhouse and landing on a floor worn smooth by generations of disappointment. Clara Mayhew pressed her forehead against the cool glass, watching the dust settle on the sleepy town street. At 24, she had long accepted her place. Her hands were more familiar with lye soap and garden soil than lace or piano keys. She was the plain sister, the shadow that followed the brilliant light of her younger sister, Rosalind. Clara. "Get down here this instant!" Her father's voice was a thunderclap that rattled the narrow staircase. She smoothed the front of her faded calico dress, a garment mended so many times it was more thread than fabric, and descended. The kitchen was a tableau of quiet desperation. Her mother sat at the table, hands clenched so tightly her knuckles were bone white. Her father, a man broken by 2 seasons of failed crops and a lifetime of wounded pride, stood by the stove, his face a storm cloud. And then there was Rosalind, sobbing prettily into a lace handkerchief. Even in distress, Rosalind was a vision. Golden hair catching the light, porcelain skin untouched by sun or labor, and blue eyes that sparkled all the more for the tears swimming in them. "Tell her," her father commanded. Rosalind's sobs intensified. "I can't marry him, Clara. I simply can't." A rancher in the Dakota Reach living in some hovel in the wilderness. "I'd rather die!" Clara's stomach plummeted as understanding dawned. For 6 months, Rosalind had been exchanging letters with a rancher named Silas Cole, who had advertised for a mail-order bride. The family had celebrated when he sent money for her passage west. It meant one less mouth to feed and a respectable, if distant, marriage for their beautiful daughter. "You gave your word," their mother said, her voice a fragile whisper. "I was confused. I didn't know what I was agreeing to," Rosalind wailed, though the performance was starting to fray at the edges. "Besides, the merchant's son has been calling on me. I could stay here, near civilization, near family. Enough." Her father's fist slammed the table. "You took that man's money. You made a promise. This family's reputation is on the line. Then let Clara go." The words fell into the tense silence like stones into a still pond. Every eye in the room turned to Clara. She felt the blood drain from her face. "What?" she whispered. Rosalind straightened, her tears miraculously ceasing. "Mr. Cole has never seen me. We've only exchanged letters and that one photograph. The one where you can barely make out my features. Clara could go in my place. She's more suited to that kind of life anyway." The unspoken words hung in the air. "She's plain enough for the wilderness. She's already worn down by work. No one here will marry her anyway." The truth of it stung worse than any slap. "That's dishonest," Clara said, her voice shaking but firm. "Is it?" Her father studied her with cold, calculating eyes. "You're both Mayhew daughters. He advertised for a bride and he'll get one." His lips curved into a cruel smile. "Besides, what prospects do you have here?" "You think any man is going to court you when your sister is available?" He was right. For years, she had watched men's eyes slide right past her to land on Rosalind. She had served refreshments while Rosalind danced. She had minded the farm while Rosalind attended picnics. She was a fixture, as solid and overlooked as the porch steps. "I won't lie to him," Clara said, lifting her chin. "Then tell him the truth when you arrive." Her father shrugged. "Let him decide." "But you will go, girl. You will honor this family's commitment." The next 2 days were a blur of numb preparation. Her mother helped her pack a small trunk with her few practical dresses, a Bible, and some preserved food. Rosalind avoided her completely, though Clara heard her laughing with friends in the parlor, her crisis already forgotten. That night, Clara found the letters from Silas Cole on her bed, left there by her sister. Reading them by candlelight, she tried to piece together the man she was being sent to. His handwriting was careful, educated. He wrote of his homestead, of the vast empty land, of mountains that touched the sky. He wrote of loneliness, too, a quiet ache hidden between descriptions of his daily chores. He was a veteran of the war, a man who had built his home with his own hands. He wanted a partner, someone strong enough for frontier life. He had written those words to the beautiful girl in the photograph, not to her. At the train station, the farewell was cold and brief. Her father's final words were a command. "Don't shame us." Her mother pressed a small bag of candies into her hand. Rosalind stood apart, a vision in blue wool. For a moment their eyes met, and Clara saw a flicker of something in her sister's gaze. Guilt, perhaps, or just profound relief. Then she looked away. As the train lurched forward, Clara looked back. Her family was already walking away, already forgetting. She was truly alone, propelled toward an unknown future, her sister's lie heavy in her pocket and a stranger's name on her lips. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels became the soundtrack to Clara's journey into the unknown. With every mile, the familiar green hills of Missouri flattened and faded, giving way to an endless expanse of prairie that stretched to the horizon. The world outside her window grew larger, emptier, and more intimidating. This was the Dakota Reach, a land that didn't seem to care for softness or beauty. It was a land of harsh sun and relentless wind, and it felt like the edge of the world. Inside the train car, Clara was a ghost, rehearsing the words she would say to Silas Cole over and over in her mind. Each version felt more inadequate than the last. How could she explain a betrayal so profound? The shame of her family's deception was a physical weight, but beneath it, a stubborn resolve hardened within her. The truth was the only real thing she possessed, and she would not part with it, no matter the cost. After days that blurred into one another, the train finally hissed to a stop at a windswept station in a town called Promise Creek. It was a raw, rugged place, built of splintery wood and sheer grit. The people on the platform were weathered and direct, their faces carved by the same wind that whipped dust into Clara's eyes. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she scanned the crowd. In his letters, Silas had described himself simply. Tall, dark hair, would be wearing a good black hat. But that described half the men there. "End of the line, miss," the conductor called. Clara stepped down onto the packed dirt, clutching her small trunk. The wind immediately tried to steal her bonnet. "Miss Mayhew?" The deep voice made her turn. The man standing before her was taller and broader than she had imagined, his shoulders stretching the fabric of his clean but faded shirt. Dark hair showed beneath his black hat, and his face was angular and severely handsome, weathered by sun and wind. But it was his eyes that held her. They were the color of a winter sky, gray, serious, and searching. This was Silas Cole, and he was looking at her with an expression of profound, barely concealed confusion. This was the moment. She squared her shoulders. "Mr. Cole," she began, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "I'm Clara Mayhew, Rosalind's sister." His brow furrowed. "Sister?" "Yes. There's something I must tell you right away. Rosalind, she couldn't come. She changed her mind about the marriage. My father sent me in her place." The confession hung in the dusty air between them. "I know this isn't what you expected, and I understand if you want to send me back on the next train. I have enough money for the ticket." "She's not coming," he said. It wasn't a question, it was a flat statement, his voice unreadable. Clara shook her head, shame burning her cheeks. "I'm sorry. I told them it wasn't right, but you came instead." He studied her for a long, unnerving moment. She felt utterly exposed under his scrutiny, aware of her travel-worn dress, the strands of brown hair escaping her bonnet, her work-roughened hands. She knew what he saw, a plain woman, nothing like the golden beauty in the photograph he'd received. "You traveled 5 days alone?" he asked finally. "Yes, through territory that's still half wild. To marry a man you've never met, a man who wasn't even writing to you." Clara lifted her chin. "To honor my family's obligation." and to tell you the truth so you could choose." Something shifted in his expression. It wasn't warmth, not exactly, but a slight softening around his eyes. A flicker of something that might have been respect. "I see." He picked up her trunk as if it weighed nothing. "My wagon's this way." "But don't you want to?" "It's near dark," he cut her off. "There won't be another train for 3 days. You'll come to the homestead tonight. We can sort this out tomorrow." The wagon ride was silent as dusk painted the vast landscape in shades of purple and gray. The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken questions. The sheer scale of the land was overwhelming, making her feel small and insignificant. "Why aren't you married?" he asked suddenly, his bluntness startling her. The question stung, but she appreciated its directness. "I'm not the sort men court," she answered honestly, "especially when they could court my sister instead." "But you came here anyway." "To marry a stranger." "I came to tell you the truth," she corrected him. "What happens next is your choice." They rode on until a warm glow of windows appeared in the darkness. "That's the homestead," he said. As they drew closer, she saw it was more substantial than the hovel Rosalind had feared. A 2-story house, a large barn, several outbuildings, all speaking of years of hard work and careful planning. The house was simple but well built, a testament to the man beside her. Inside, the front room was sparse but neat. A stone fireplace, a rocking chair, a few pieces of sturdy furniture. It was a house built for function over comfort, a house that was waiting for a woman's touch to make it a home. "There's a guest room where you can sleep tonight," he said, setting her trunk near the stairs. He ladled some stew into a bowl for her, and they ate in a watchful silence at the scarred wooden table. As he showed her to the small, clean guest room, he paused in the doorway, his face half in shadow. "I advertised for a wife, Miss Mayhew, a partner to share this life. Your sister promised that, then broke her word. You came here knowing I might reject you, but you told me the truth anyway." He was quiet for a moment. "I'll decide based on who you are, not who you aren't." He closed the door, leaving Clara alone with the flickering lantern light. Through the window, the Wyoming sky was scattered with more stars than she had ever seen. He would decide tomorrow. Tonight, she was here, in this strange house on the edge of the wilderness, having traded one cage for another. But as she lay in the narrow bed, listening to the coyotes calling in the distance, she held on to his last words. He would judge her for who she was. And for the first time in her life, that felt like a chance. Dawn in the Dakota Reach came swiftly, painting the sky in stark, beautiful colors. Clara woke to the sound of a rooster and the distant lowing of cattle. For a moment she forgot where she was, but the unfamiliar silence of the house brought it all rushing back. Silas Cole's homestead, the guest room, the uncertain future that awaited her downstairs. Dressing quickly, she saw through the kitchen window that Silas was already in the barn, his tall figure moving with an economical grace that spoke of long habit. The kitchen was orderly but lacked warmth. It was a space for sustenance, not comfort. Without a second thought, Clara began to work. It was the only language she was truly fluent in. By the time Silas entered, stamping the dust from his boots, she had biscuits browning in the oven, bacon sizzling in the pan, and coffee brewing, strong and black. He stopped short, taking in the scene. The aroma alone had changed the entire feel of the room. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I'm used to being useful," Clara replied simply, not turning from the stove. "Sit, it's almost ready." He sat at the table watching as she moved efficiently around his kitchen. When she set the plate before him, golden biscuits, crisp bacon, perfectly fried eggs, something flickered in his gray eyes. "This is good," he said after the first bite. "It's just breakfast." "It's been a long time since anyone cooked for me like this," he admitted. After the meal, he pushed back from the table. "I need to speak plain with you, Miss Mayhew." Clara's stomach tightened, but she met his gaze. "I appreciate directness. I need a wife, not for decoration. There's precious little society out here. I need a partner, someone who can handle the work, the isolation, the hard seasons." His eyes searched hers. "The nearest neighbor is 8 miles east. In winter, we might be cut off for weeks." "Mr. Cole," Clara said quietly, "I've spent my life working. I know isolation. I've been in a crowded room and still been alone because no one saw me past my prettier sister. I can work your garden, tend your house, help with stock if needed. I am not afraid of hard seasons." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood. "Come with me." Outside in the crisp morning air, he showed her the ranch. The sturdy barn, the corrals, the vast plains stretching toward distant mountains. "Built it from nothing after the war," he said. "Every fence post, every building placed with these hands." A rider appeared on the horizon, resolving into a young man with sandy hair and an easy smile. "Morning, Silas. This the new Mrs. Cole?" he asked, his eyes lighting up as he saw Clara. "Miss Mayhew," Silas corrected, his voice tight. "Clara, this is Leo. He helps out." "Pleased to meet you, ma'am." Leo grinned, his admiration open and honest. "Welcome to the territory. Silas here's a lucky man." Clara felt a warmth in her cheeks. It had been years since a man had looked at her with such undisguised appreciation. She watched them ride off to fix a fence, noting how Leo kept glancing back. Silas sat his horse like he was born to it, straight and unyielding. That afternoon, a rickety wagon pulled up, driven by a woman who looked as weathered and tough as the land itself. "Hello there. I'm Hattie Finch, your nearest neighbor," she announced, her smile as warm as the summer sun. "Came to see if Silas finally got himself hitched." Soon, Clara found herself telling Hattie the whole complicated story over coffee. "So you're not the pretty sister," Hattie said bluntly. "Good. Pretty would last about one winter out here before hightailing it back east. You, though," she studied Clara, "you've got staying power. I can tell." She offered a piece of advice before she left. "Don't try to be your sister. Be yourself. That man's got no use for pretense." Weeks passed in a rhythm of work and careful distance. Clara brought order and life to the homestead, and Silas watched her with his quiet, assessing gaze. The change came the evening she was cleaning a small desk in the parlor. A drawer stuck, and when she finally wrestled it open, a bundle of papers scattered across the floor. They were Silas's letters, the ones he'd never sent. Rough drafts, crossed out and rewritten. She shouldn't read them. But her eyes caught on Rosalind's name, and she was lost. These letters revealed a different Silas, one who struggled to express the loneliness that ate at him, who wrote of nightmares from the war, who longed for someone to share not just his work, but his silences. "The land out here takes more than it gives," he'd written in one draft. "I need someone who understands that, someone who can find beauty in harsh places. What are you doing?" She jumped. Silas stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. "I'm sorry," she stammered, gathering the pages. The drawer stuck. "I shouldn't have read them." He took the papers from her shaking hands. Instead of anger, he looked down at them with a kind of bewilderment. "I wrote these before sending the proper ones," he said quietly. "Couldn't figure out how to say what I meant without sounding like a fool." "You don't sound like a fool," Clara whispered. "You sound like a man who understands what matters." He looked at her then, truly looked at her, as if for the first time. "Do you want to see it?" he asked abruptly. "What I wrote about. The sunset from the ridge. It's something I wanted to share." This was his first true invitation, a step beyond their practical arrangement, and Clara nodded, not trusting her voice. They rode in silence up a winding trail into the foothills, the air growing cooler, scented with pine and sage. At a wide ledge overlooking the entire valley, the view stole Clara's breath. The homestead was a child's toy below, nestled in a vast landscape of grassland and distant purple mountains. The setting sun painted everything in shades of gold and crimson. "I come here when the world gets too heavy," Silas said quietly, standing beside her. "During the war, I'd remember this place. Kept me sane." He glanced at her. "Your sister would have hated it." Her letters were full of parties and new dresses. She wrote about people, never about the land. He paused. "I think I was writing to the wrong sister." The words hung between them. Clara's heart thundered, but she waited. "I'm not an easy man," he continued, his eyes on the horizon. "I have dark moods, memories that won't stay buried. I don't know how to court a woman proper." "I don't need courting," Clara said softly. "What do you need?" She thought carefully. "Truth, work that matters. Someone who sees me as I am, not as a pale shadow of my sister. A place to belong that I've earned." He turned to her then, his gray eyes intense. Annie, her name on his lips, was rough, uncertain. "I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to answer true. Could you make a life here? Not because your father sent you, but because you choose it." She looked at this hard, lonely man who had brought her to his sacred place. "I've been choosing it every day," she said. "Every meal I cook, every shirt I mend. I'm here because this feels like where I'm meant to be." His calloused hand found hers. "I can't promise easy," he said, "but I can promise truth, partnership, respect. Maybe in time." "Maybe is enough," she whispered. Maybe is a beginning. 3 days later, the storm hit. It came without warning, a sudden violent onslaught of thunder, lightning, and torrential rain. The creek that was usually a gentle trickle swelled into a raging river. A fence in the east pasture broke, and the cattle, wild with fear, scattered towards a dangerous bluff. Silas and Leo rode out into the chaos, but it was a battle against nature itself. From the house, Clara saw it happen. A lightning strike spooked Silas's horse, and in the ensuing chaos, a falling branch from a cottonwood tree caught him, sending him tumbling down a muddy embankment near the creek. He was trapped, his leg clearly injured, directly in the path of the rising floodwaters. Leo was on the far side of the herd, too far away to help in time. Clara didn't hesitate. She grabbed a coil of rope from the barn and rode into the storm, ignoring Silas's shouts for her to go back. The water was shockingly cold, the current a monstrous force. Reaching the bank above him, she worked with desperate speed. Using the knot-tying skills her father had taught her for farm work, she fashioned a loop and threw the rope down to him. "Tie it around your waist." She screamed over the roar of the water. He managed it, his face pale with pain. Clara wrapped the other end of the rope around her saddle horn and urged her horse backward, away from the crumbling bank. For a terrifying moment, it was a battle of wills, one woman and one horse against the full fury of the flood. The rope went taut, her horse strained, and inch by agonizing inch, she dragged him up the slick, muddy bank to safety, just as a wall of brown water crested where he had been moments before. They staggered back to the house, soaked, muddy, exhausted, but alive. The adrenaline faded, leaving a raw, undeniable intimacy in its wake. As they sat wrapped in blankets by the fire, the storm passing outside, Silas looked at her, his gaze stripped of all pretense. "I spoke to the preacher in town last week," he said, his voice hoarse. "He can marry us on Saturday, if you still want to, after seeing what life here can really be like." Clara moved to sit across from him, her hand covering his. "Silas, I didn't wade into that creek because I had to. I did it because you were in trouble and I couldn't bear to lose you. Not when we've just found each other." His hand turned under hers, fingers lacing with hers. "When I saw you coming down that bank, terrified and determined and not backing down, I knew." "Knew what?" "That I'd written to the wrong sister," he said. "But maybe that was the only way to find the right one." He managed the ghost of a smile, the first real, unguarded smile she had ever seen on his face. "Saturday, then." The next day they worked side by side, clearing the debris. The storm had taken a toll on the homestead, but it had washed away all uncertainty between them. They were no longer a man and a woman on trial. They were partners. Months passed. Clara and Silas were married, and their partnership, forged in the crucible of the storm, was now being tested by a grueling drought. The land grew brittle and brown, and the work was relentless, but they faced it as a solid unit. They had found their rhythm, a quiet understanding that needed few words. Their reputation in Promise Creek was changing too. One afternoon in the general store, Clara overheard the familiar whispers from the town gossips. "Married the wrong sister, they say. Plain as a fence post." Before the words could sting, Silas's voice cut through the air like a whip crack. He had come in behind her, his face like thunder. "My wife is exactly what I need," he announced to the silent store. "She works harder than any 3 women in this town. She has kept our ranch running through this drought while others have given up." He moved to Clara's side, a solid, protective presence. "You want to know what I chose? I chose strength over beauty, substance over show. I chose a partner who stands beside me in the worst of times, not an ornament who'd wilt at the first sign of hardship. I chose Clara, and I'd choose her again every day for the rest of my life." Word of that speech traveled, as gossip does, all the way back to Missouri. It found Rosalind, whose own engagement to the merchant's son had fallen through. Seeing an opportunity, she packed her finest dresses and traveled west. The fancy buggy appeared on the horizon like an apparition, absurdly out of place in the dusty, drought-stricken landscape. "Jessie!" Clara called, her voice tight. "It's Rosalind." She descended from the carriage like a queen, her pink silk dress somehow pristine, her golden hair perfectly arranged. "Clara, dear," she chirped, her eyes taking in the peeling paint on the barn and Clara's faded work dress. How rustic. In the kitchen she perched on a chair, an exotic bird in a simple cage. "I must say," she began, "from what I hear in town, things have been rather difficult. This dreadful drought. It must be so hard for you, Mr. Cole. I can't help but think how different things might have been." "You mean if you'd kept your word?" Clara asked, her anger finally overcoming her restraint. "Oh, dear." Rosalind feigned innocence, turning the full force of her beauty on Silas. "Though I must confess, reading those letters, feeling that connection we shared, I've wondered if perhaps fate meant for us to find another way to each other." The silence was deafening. Here was the ghost of the past, beautiful and tempting, offering Silas the woman he thought he'd chosen. Silas pushed off from the door frame where he'd been leaning, moving to stand behind Clara's chair. His hand came to rest on her shoulder, warm and steady. "Mrs. Mayhew," he said, his voice carrying the same steel it had in the general store. "You seem to think I made a mistake. That I settled. You're wrong." Rosalind's smile faltered. "Your letters were pretty lies," Silas continued, his voice calm and methodical. "You wrote about parties and fashion. Not once did you mention if you could birth a calf, mend a fence, or stand beside a man when the world was burning down around him. Those are not romantic topics. They are real life. My life. The life Clara has embraced without complaint." He moved to face Rosalind directly. "You want to know what I see when I look at my wife? I see a woman who told me the truth from the first moment. I see strength that comes from character, not from charm. I see beauty that goes deeper than skin." He took a breath. "So, no, I don't wonder how things might have been different. I thank God every day that you broke your word because it brought me Clara." Clara felt tears blur her vision, but she blinked them back. She found her own voice, looking her sister straight in the eye. "I am home, Rosalind." Defeated, Rosalind's beautiful face went hard. "Then you're a fool," she spat, sweeping out of the house and out of their lives for good. The dust from her carriage settled. The silence she left behind was not empty, but peaceful. "She was right about one thing," Clara said quietly. "Water does find its own level." Silas pulled her into his arms. "We match, you and I. Not in the way she meant it as an insult, but truly. We're both scarred, both practical, both more interested in truth than pretty pictures." That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge in the clear, dusty sky, he took her hand. "No more ghosts," he said. "No more wondering if you were second choice. You were my true choice, Clara, my only choice. The one I'll keep choosing every day for the rest of our lives." Clara squeezed his hand, feeling the calluses that matched her own. The drought would eventually break and the rains would come, but they had already weathered the most important storm. They had chosen each other not in spite of who they were, but because of it. And that choice, renewed daily in 1,000 small acts of love and partnership, was worth more than all the beauty in the world. And so, under the vast western sky, a life that began with a lie was rebuilt on a foundation of truth, proving that the heart doesn't choose beauty, it chooses strength. It doesn't choose perfection, it chooses partnership. It chooses home. If you enjoyed Clara and Silas's journey, please show your support by giving this video a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. What was your favorite moment in their story? Don't forget to subscribe and check out the playlist for more tales from the heart of the frontier. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. Thank you for watching.